Hey, everybody. Thanks for being on the show today. This is a real treat. I have a returning guest. Tamsen, you are 2/5 of the way to your jacket. You know, in Saturday Night Live, they
Do
get
I
the
get? Oh my
five-time
gosh, I
jacket.
hope so.
Yes, I
Yes,
have
I've
somebody
always
who's like,
wanted
they're
one.
they're like, I want a jacket. I'm like, it's gonna be a really cool jacket. So you're on number two. You're not
Excellent.
not Justin Timberlake quite yet, but you're
No.
moving that way. Yeah,
Yeah.
there. So Tamsen Webster is a second-time guest. You're on a couple years ago, and we talked about the red thread and some of the work you're doing around that, and got to know you. We are back talking to you because you have a book coming out, and it is all around something that every single one of us has to deal with every single day, and it's change.
Yes.
And we are here in September of 2024 in the
Yes.
United States, and there's a lot of change going on, and there
A
will be change
lot.
going on,
Yes.
constant change all the time. For those of us who have children in school, we just have changed. Kids went off to school.
Hmm.
We have politics. We have the countries changing. We have all sorts of things changing, and businesses everywhere are also having to change due to technology. Just going to bring this up in real time. We're literally recording this right after the Fed announced a half-point rate reduction, which has a massive impact on
It does.
businesses. So there will be changes to strategies and such,
There
and what
will.
they're going to do around hiring and buying and stuff. So we're going to talk about change today. And before we do that, Tamsen, I'd love if you just give us, just again, a real brief overview of who you are, what you do, where you're based, and then we're going to have a super cool conversation about some of these concepts.
Sure. So I'm Tamsen Webster. I am a message designer. And what that means is that I help leaders build buy-in for large scale and transformational change. So I spent a lot of time doing that, actually all my time doing that. I love it. I've been doing it for, in one way or another, for 25 plus years. It's embarrassing. So yeah, or I just started as a child. I wish I could tell you that. Either way, it's good. I'm based in Boston, Massachusetts. I was not born there, but I have lived here long enough to develop a Bostonian alter ego named Karen O'Sullivan.
Karen O'Sullivan. Okay.
Yes. She
There you
loves the
go.
Red Sox, hot dogs, go to Fenway Park.
Fenway Park.
Fenway
Change.
Park.
We could talk about
Yes.
change in sports. That would be an interesting.
Oh my gosh.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's been up and down here. I mean, it's been a fun couple decades to live in Boston, because it definitely has been like title town here. So that has been, I've been here since well before the Red Sox broke the curse. So I was definitely like a diehard, like long-suffering Red Sox fan until 2004. But yeah, it's a great place. I love Boston, and I love the work that I do.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we're going to come back on and have another really fun conversation about a topic that is serious, but also bring some levity to it as well, because it's inevitable.
It is.
So let's kick off.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Let's do it. No. And none of it happens without talking about it most of the time. And that is really what the book is all about. Like, how do we talk about change in order to make it less painful, less stressful, more likely to happen, and more likely to last? That's really what I was trying to help people do.
What's the genesis of this book, or the inspiration? Like, what has you do a lot of different things really well. You have a lot of topics you could write about. Why change?
It is, you mentioned the red thread, change, and how to help other people make it happen, which I know sounds a little redundant, but that actually is the role that I've played, is the red thread of my life. I first became interested in what it takes to create a lasting change starting when I was 17, and I had my first panic attack. But my role in organizations, from both education, undergrad, grad school, focusing on managerial communications, I was a change management consultant for a little while. All of that has been about helping organizations either create change internally and or through the work that they're doing, create change in their clients and customers' lives. With a lot of the startups I work with, they're trying to create planetary change. And it has just been the thing that I know better than anything else. I'm not saying I know it better than anyone else, but it is the thing that I know deeply and to my core. because I've been so focused on it from so many different perspectives in so many different ways for so long, I couldn't help but notice that some of the things that my go-to approaches and the principles behind those approaches were actually quite different than a lot of
Mm.
what, at least from a business communication standpoint, an official quote unquote change communication standpoint teaches, or if they teach it at all, which they don't. And so the more that I kept talking to people and the more that I talked to people about the red thread and what that approach was based on and other pieces like that, the more I realized people are like, well, nobody else is talking about change this way. And I was like, oh, well, if nobody else is, then let me just take these principles I've been working from for a long time and testing and honing, and let me put them down into a book. And so that I can help that process with other people work better, because
Yeah.
I've done the hard work on these, so
Yeah.
hopefully they're a lot easier for people to go, oh right,
Yeah.
this makes sense.
Help. We're going to talk about pain in a little bit, but I'm hearing that potentially helping businesses and individuals remove some of maybe the challenges that you've had to go through as you've had to deal with change in your own life.
Oh, absolutely. Right. I mean, because I think all of us, whether it's an individual or organizational, everybody's had that experience of a change that failed, right? You were trying to do something and maybe it started out great and then eventually it didn't go so well. Or, you were successful and then it went back, or you were able to get something to happen, but it didn't, like, the approach to it didn't feel good. And that, I will say that the most immediate genesis of this book was I really just got tired of hearing a persuasion and influence advice that was fundamentally what I perceive to be manipulative, coercive,
Mm.
even authoritarian. And there are times and places, maybe for some of that, I don't know. As I say in the book, there are some times when you can't stop to make sure everybody's on board for reasons of safety or,
Sure.
emergency or whatever. But that's usually not where we are most of the time.
Yeah.
And so it is. I wanted to be able to articulate for other people the way that I have found and that I have seen work reliably for creating a lasting change that stays changed, transformational change, large scale change, in a way that doesn't rely on either, as I like to call it, the stick or the ick, right? It doesn't rely
Yeah, I
on,
like that.
kind of rewards or consequences, or it just doesn't feel good because it doesn't feel principled. It may
Yeah.
work, but there's just certain things where it's like, ooh, one of the tip off phrases for me is when people say, well, if you do this, you can get someone to do X, Y, or Z. And I'm like, just not as comfortable with that, because that doesn't imply that person's acting on their own, which
Yeah.
is a better foundation for long-term change, is that they're doing
Yeah.
it because they want to.
I think let's kind of kick off as we move into a couple of these points. Let's normalize the context around change. And let's talk about organizational change.
Yeah.
Now, and we'll be doing some generalizations here. But in
Oh,
your
yes.
experience, we'll be doing some generalizations. Everybody has their own relationship to change. Some people can't do without it. It's like a drug, and other people are like, nope, any change is not good for me. Well, like what would you say is the general context in, I don't know, in the business world around the announcement of we're going to change? And I'm talking about something is enterprise wide, right? So
Yeah.
we're not talking about like we're changing a product, we're changing our pricing. We're talking about we're fundamentally like a restructure or a strategy change, like a market strategy change. What do you generally see as the context around the idea? Then the CEO stands up and says, "Hey, we're going to do some things." He or she's going to say, "We're going to do some
Yeah.
things differently."
Yeah.
What's the general mindset that you would say people have?
So I talk about this right in the introduction to the book. I would say that there's four mindsets that people have that I've seen, and I call them the actives, the ambivalents, the indifferents, and the antagonists.
Mm.
So let's start with the antagonists. Those are the people who are like, oh, heck no, right? Like, just from the get-go, like, it's because they don't want the change, or they don't want the outcome, or they don't want how it's going to happen, or just nothing. And they're not only against the change, but they can actually go even further and be actively against it. They can be
Mm-hmm.
like protesters against it. Those aren't that's, that's dangerous, obviously, because depending on how well they can make the case against you and what you're focused on, they can do damage to that change. The antagonists, though, aren't hopeless. You do have an opportunity, if you can make a strong case that resonates with them, to get them to at least neutralize or even potentially to swing over to being inactive. So let's talk about them. They're at the other
Yeah.
end of the continuum. The actives, a lot of times they're the ones that just go, yep, all right, I am down for this. I love this idea. I've been asking for this forever. Or it's my idea, so of course I love it. And those are the folks that are, actively supporting. They may even become advocates for the change. So, the best thing to do there is not spend a huge amount of time. Don't tick them off, but what you can do is equip them with the to be advocates. So help them understand a little bit more about the rationalization of the change, the rationale behind the change, so that even though they don't need to be convinced, they can be your stewards. They can take the message out there for you. So that leaves the two in the middle. And this was fun because I had multiple people as peer reviewers or whatever, and early readers, peer reviewers and early readers take a look, and they're like, are there really two in the middle? And I was like, yeah, actually there are. And the difference is whether or not they actually care.
This
And
resonates
so,
for me already. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So the indifference don't. They,
Yeah.
the way that however it's been presented to them right now, they actually really don't care, legitimately don't care one way or the other. So they'll probably go along to get along, but they're also not going to drag their feet. They're just saying, it's fine. It's fine, people. Now, you can get them more active if, for instance, you can find a way to attach it to something that they actively want. And
Mm.
I'm not talking about external reward. I'm talking about something that they value and they've been working towards. And you can say, oh, hey, this actually helps you do that. Then they may even become more actively engaged. But that lack of caring is what separates them from the ambivalence. Now, I
Mm.
think the ambivalents don't get nearly enough attention when we're thinking about how to steward or inspire a change in an organization, because it's not that the ambivalents don't care. They do. The issue is they care about something else just as
Interesting.
much.
Yeah.
And so what's happening is they're really sitting in this tension between two things that are pretty much equally strong and are pulling them in opposite directions. I want this change, but I also want to make sure that this other thing doesn't change, for instance. Or I want to be able to support the organization's mission, but I also want the flexibility to support my spouse in flexible child pickup or whatever it might
Yeah.
be. So these folks are important because they are actively looking for information that will help tip them one way or another. Right? Tip them
Mm.
into going, yeah, okay, this actually is good. I'm going to figure this out. Or, I always thought this was a bad idea. And then now I'm sure of it. So those are folks that really are actively open to information. And so they are people to pay very close attention to and to be very thoughtful about how is this change presented? What is how are you talking about, again, the rationale behind the change,
Yeah.
the case for the change, the point of view that led to the change or that's leading to the change? Those are the folks that really have I say in the book, those are the folks that can really make or break the change for you based
Yeah.
on how many of them exist to start with and how
Yeah.
many of them end up flipping towards the change rather than away from it.
There's no covert parallel here between what we're talking about and the hundreds of millions of dollars that get spent on those ambivalent people in election cycles.
Ah,
That
yeah. Oh no, none at all. I mean,
none at all.
oh gosh, yes. I mean, my starry-eyed idealist hope for this book is that it does, in fact, paint a different path forward for all kinds of
Yeah.
messaging, persuasion, those kinds of things, and ideally approaches that are less polarizing as well.
Yeah.
And yes, I mean, that's the thing. And I think what happens is that we talk to ambivalence like they're antagonists, right? Like
Oh,
they're
yeah.
against us.
Interesting. Yeah.
Or we talk to them as if they don't care. And we're like, you should care. And a lot of times, some of them are going to be, some swing voters literally don't care.
Yeah.
And then some of them are really looking at a choice as like, well, I don't really like either one of them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that, given other work that I do, so I'm also the idea strategist for TEDx New England, where we work with scientists and researchers, one of whom this time around is a decision scientist.
Mm-hmm.
And he explained, this is relevant, I promise, that when it comes
Trust you.
to a choice between two bad options, which is an ambivalent situation, right? Where
Yeah.
you are, it's neither is great, but the choice is necessary, or the issue will be that if you don't have to make a choice, those people just probably won't. But what he found is that a lot of times what we try to do is to say which is better of these two bad things. But that's
Mm-hmm.
actually, it's like using the wrong standard or using a standard that's not as effective. What he found was in that situation that keep like with like, meaning which one is worse, rather than asking which one is better, then by focusing on which one is worse, like which one gets you to worst faster,
Yeah.
then that's actually an easier choice. You're not saying that you actually like them, but you are saying, yeah, but that one's worse. And because that one's worse, I'm going to act against that one because, again, I may not like the other one,
Yeah.
but I don't like what's going to happen with that one. So, all of that, though, to come back to messaging, is understanding those kinds of nuances is what can help you frame a narrative, whether it's around a political stance or around a new compliance policy internally or around a new product or initiative. That's the kind of thing that can really make or break. And I don't
Yeah.
mean set it up of like, this is the worst option that gets back to the pain. But, as we have seen in previous elections, a lot of times the strongest narrative wins,
Yeah.
meaning the strongest story that people can tell themselves about why a particular choice makes sense. Whatever organization, person, political party, candidate is able to supply that story that really feels immediately aligned with how somebody already sees the world. Whoever can do that best generally wins.
Yeah.
And so this book, while not specific to politicians, is about doing that, but from a principle of integrity and congruence with your beliefs. So it's not about,
Beautiful.
again, getting someone to do something. It's saying, I believe in this position, this stance, this policy, because I believe that it will accomplish this outcome, because I believe these things are true about how the world works, how people works, what this organization stands for, etc. And so in that way, the reason why it avoids this trap of manipulation is because you're not actually trying to manipulate people at all. You're basically
Mm.
just saying, this is my point of view. And I am going to take the risk that you don't agree. I am of the
Mm.
opinion that if few enough people articulate that clear enough, like just your
Yeah.
ability to articulate that is probably going to win 9 times out of 10 because most people don't. So, yeah. Anyway, that was a lot, but it
No,
is
that's
all
fantastic,
intertwined.
Tamsen. So I think this is a perfect segue into one of the principles in your book,
Yes.
which is that the primary enemy of long-term change in any context is pain, or if I could define that even further, is pain avoidance. It's
So yeah, yes, exactly. Right. The perception or the anticipation of enduring pain is
yeah.
in fact your biggest enemy to a change that lasts.
So let's talk.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. So I have a belief. I'm gonna I'm gonna share a belief that I have about the business world
Hmm.
is that high level folks should have a higher tolerance for pain. I'm not talking about board or investors.
Yeah.
Thing on the other side. I'm talking about people that have to make big decisions for the good of a company.
Mm.
Arguably should, or maybe like should's a bad word, but I believe that they should have a high level of, it's going to be painful, but I know it's the right thing, and I'm going to stand in those values and in my integrity, and we're going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
And that's my belief. It's biased, but I also see just the opposite happens all of the time.
Yeah. So, couple thoughts on that. One is, if I am interpreting what you're saying correctly, I also agree, but I would call it something different.
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah.
Meaning that someone who is able to say, this is going to be difficult, this is going to be hard, there is going to be a high effort involved in here, but this is worth it because I am clear on how this is not only good for the organization and what the organization is trying to do, but it's also good for the people that actually make this organization work. I do believe this. And it's because I wish that more people did that, that I believe that those who want to be that kind of leader are willing to do the work to make sure that the messaging around that change articulates that belief from the beginning. And I also agree a lot of people don't do that. So when I'm talking about pain, I mean the kind of psychological, emotional, mental pain that we humans will not stand for any length of time without either stopping that pain, stopping the source of the pain, or reframing something in our minds in order to reduce it ourselves.
Yeah.
Now, so the way that this comes into play, though, is that some people are like, well, that's absolutely not what I was taught. I mean, my sales training was about making the pain of the status quo equal the pain of change. And if somebody's
Right.
not in pain, they're not going to move.
Yeah.
Okay. And they're like, but Kahneman. I'm like, I read Kahneman. I know all about prospect theory and loss aversion. Like, I get it. And the thing is yes, that's true. Yes, that, pain, anxiety, fear will get someone to move quickly in the short term, right? Because
Yeah.
if you touch a hot stove, you don't even think about it.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Is that if you are operating from pain, that you are increasing, accelerating, inducing mental pain in order to get someone to act in favor of a decision or something like that, you are operating with someone who is not thinking about it. You are operating with someone who is operating, back to Kahneman, from system one, from fast brain, from anxious brain, from a fear basis.
Yeah.
An anxious brain cannot learn. It cannot fully understand. It cannot think through consequences. It cannot be open to new ideas. It's going to take the first available option to reduce pain. This, in my view, is where, I don't know, somewhere between 99 and 99.9% of buyer's remorse comes from.
Yeah.
Right? Because you've
Yeah.
done something in the moment. You're like something was, you made a decision at a high stimulation, and then late, or because you were talking to a salesperson that made the pain of the status quo exceed the pain of change. And then once you had a moment to breathe, once you had a moment to sit down, once you had a moment for system two to take over, for your rational brain to go back, some part of your brain went, wait a minute.
Yeah.
No. Right.
Yeah.
And that's where, because a lot of times what happens is that we realize that we were coerced or manipulated into that change. We can't tolerate that we might have made that mistake. So we're going to turn it on whoever made or drove that decision in the first place. We kind of shoot the messenger, metaphorically.
Yeah.
We turn on our, the salesperson, we turn on the brand, we turn on the company that we felt did that to us. And so again, it may work in the short term. And I say in the book, pain is in fact the ally of quick action.
Sure.
But if somebody anticipates that they have to live with that decision, and living with that decision means some kind of mental, physical, or emotional pain, not just discomfort, but pain, they won't do it because humans won't do it. We will not continue to do something that we find emotionally, mentally, physically painful to do. And so this is why the flip, if you're really looking for change that where, yes, you're getting a yes, but it's a yes you're more likely to retain, right? And that you're not going to have
Mm,
to go back and go over again. If you're getting a yes that is going to create advocates where they've got a story they can tell themselves to themselves about this, and a story they can tell to other people, which is another place where a decision made out of pain or anxiety breaks down, right? Because all of a sudden we try to explain why we did it to somebody else, and all of a sudden we're like, I
they
don't
don't have the same
actually have
values as
a,
I do. Yeah, they don't have the
yeah, well,
information. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Well, when they explained it, it seemed really important, but now I can't, and that's
Yeah.
how we can lose it too. When you're trying to get when you're trying to do the opposite of that, when you're trying to get a yes that lasts, then the mantra to yourself is, you know, don't introduce pain, reduce it, right? We are trying to figure out in how we present the change, in what we're asking people to do as part of that change. We're trying to figure out how to frame it, how to stage it in every possible way. So we are making the biggest change that we can without crossing that pain threshold.
Mm,
So, so instead of asking someone to go from 0 to 60, it might mean go 0 to 10 for a little while.
yeah.
Get them used to that. Then we go, then we go, then we go. And does that mean that you might take longer to introduce the full change? Yes. Does it mean that you are also much more likely to never have to do that work again? Also, yes.
Yes.
And it's redoing it that is more expensive, more traumatic, less likely to work, because now people have developed essentially scar tissue against that effort. And so it's really about how can we do this in a way that works forward for us, not just in the moment, but also works over time.
Yeah. Brilliant. I want to now move into a framework that you use as a way for folks in your work, and you talk a little bit about this in the book, about a way that you can look at change in decision making. And I want to frame this up for the audience here. And it's like, how in the world could somebody make that decision?
Hmm.
Like from our perspective, like how is that, man? How can they vote
You're
for that
like,
person?
what are
Yeah.
you thinking?
What are
Yeah.
you thinking? And
Yeah.
then my generally think is, well, obviously they're not. But it's from my own
Yeah.
perspective.
Of
And th-
course. Yeah.
and so that is a normal, very obviously everybody listening knows
It
that is a
is.
very normal reaction.
Yes.
And your hypothesis, I don't even know if it's a hypothesis. I would say this
It's
is
not.
probably
It's
it's a
very
truth.
evidence-based. Yes,
It's
it
an evidence
is.
base.
Yeah.
It's a truth. That can be deadly to creating change.
Oh,
That
100%.
idea.
Yeah.
So you have a framework. I'd love to wrap up for today and talk a little bit about some tangible ways that people, as they're introducing change or suggesting change, ways you can,
Yeah.
from a decision making matrix, go,
Mhm.
hey, this is a good idea or not, as opposed to
Yes.
like, it feels good or the consultant told me.
Right. So building actually on one of the things we were just talking about, that pain is the enemy of long-term change. One of the most enduring, emotionally painful sources of pain for all humans. So therefore, it is a thing to always keep in mind when you are framing a change, coming up with one in the first place, is that source of the greatest pain is a violation of somebody's desired self-concept. And what I mean by that is how they want to be seen by
Mm-hmm.
themselves, by other people. By other people is particularly important because
Yes.
one thing we can rely on is that I, I think it's fair to say all humans. I need to find if that there's evidence to support this, but I would say that most functional humans operate from a desire, deep-seated desire to be seen as smart, capable, and good. So that's how I frame it, as smart, capable, and good. And even if they don't believe, and plenty of people believe they are smart, capable, and good, but the reason why I like to frame it is they want to be seen as smart, capable, and good is because some people, aren't so sure, but they really want to be seen as smart, capable, and good. And so because that is such a universal desire, motivation, element of our identity, we can use that as a check on how we're approaching change from our own standpoint, how we're approaching other people, and B, a check on how we are framing it. And here's what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
They want to be seen as smart, capable, and good. And so what we want to do is we want to act as if they are. And I know that sounds like obvious, but it isn't actually what we do most of the time. A lot of
No.
times in how we're framing messaging and change communications is really, if you boil it down, is you will be smart, capable, and good if you do this.
Ah,
We say
yeah,
we make it conditional
sure.
that a smart, capable, and good person would do this. All right. No, that means you are telling them directly or indirectly that they are not smart, capable, and good now. So again, they may act in the moment because it's painful that you don't see them that way right now, but
Yeah,
their larger self-concept is like, wait a minute, that person must think I'm stupid, right?
yeah.
And then to have
Brilliant.
said that, and then they're going to go like, well, I'm not. I mean, we just, most of us won't tolerate that long term.
No.
And so I have found and I've seen that it saves so much time and effort and ill will to start from the perspective that somebody already is smart, capable, and good. And so when you say to yourself, what were they thinking? Then the thing to add to that is, what were they thinking as a smart, capable, and good person would, right? Because a smart, capable, and good
Mm,
person is doing this, is thinking this way. So there must be something about it that makes sense to them. And it's not because they're not smart or not capable or not good. It's because there is something of value in whatever they don't want to let go of or whatever it is that they're doing. And back to Kahneman and loss aversion, that's really critical to understand
yeah.
because you either need to acknowledge that that thing it may or may not go away. It may go away depending on what your thing is, and account for it. Right? Nature abhors a vacuum. You can't take away something that somebody values without supplying something else. Or once you understand what they are truly valuing in there, show the change as an alternative path to getting there. So they're not going to lose it
Mm,
at all. They still get to have that thing that they want. So the practical tactical thing that I present in the book to help with this is just something I call the smart capable good test or the SCG test. And what it is simply this. You're looking through every element of how you are interacting with someone. You can think of this from a marketing standpoint or business standpoint or leadership standpoint and saying, is every aspect of this message, of this interaction, helping that person feel and reinforce their pre-existing smart capable goodness?
yeah.
Right. And, one of the, thanks to one of my colleagues in the message strategy space, Shepard Smith, for this example, but you can see, I would say that the following fails this test. Think about you get a pop up for a special offer of something. Let's say that you've already like closed out of something. You get that pop up as a special offer. And on the button, it says, no thanks. I like spending more money.
Yeah.
Does not make someone feel smart, capable, and good.
No.
In fact, it makes you go, you're a jerk. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, and maybe it gets someone to go, oh, wait, I'm spending more money. I think the more, maybe I'm wrong here, but at the very least, put it this way, you're losing everybody as a customer
Yeah.
who that is distasteful. When it's such an easy fix to say, I'm not ready right now. Not yet. Maybe later. No thanks, not for me. That's all you have to do.
Yeah.
Right? That's all you have to do. And so it really does start from saying kind of just that presumption. Start from this presumption that somebody is already smart, capable, and good, because it will help you understand so much more
Mm,
about why and how they see the world that they do. And even better, this is where my starry-eyed idealist comes in, but it's actually really practical because I've seen it work over and over again in
yes.
business. You can start to find the path to shared principles and shared values that allow you to move forward, even though your initial perspective was really quite far apart.
Um, Can you imagine if we, well, this I'm speaking to somebody that you just called yourself a star idealist. So I'm sure you can imagine this. You probably dream about this all the time.
I'm
Imagine
also a skeptic, so I'm a starry-eyed skeptic. Let's put it that way. I
starry-eyed
am a
skeptic.
starry-eyed skeptic.
Yeah. Where imagine if we related to everybody else around us as smart, capable, and good.
Yeah.
Versus us versus them.
I mean, here's the thing. The reason why I have hope for this is that there is some version of the principle that in the Christian world, in the Judeo-Christian world, we embody in do unto others as they would have do unto you. But just about, I mean, truly, every religion, every philosophy has some version of that.
Yeah.
Which means there is something that we believe as humans living in this world with other humans, that there is something useful to us in one way or another. Maybe that's altruistic, maybe it's practical, maybe it's mercenary, whatever. There's something useful to us in extending to others the kind of treatment that we ourselves would value.
Yeah.
Right? Or to put a negative frame on it, not doing to others what we would not want to have done back to us. That's what gives me hope, right? Because it says that no matter what, there are these beliefs that are deeper than identity, are deeper than culture, are deeper than politics, that for whatever motivation we have them, we share them. And that is where I think that even if you just, you say, well, imagine what that would be. Try it for a day. It does, in fact, make you start to go, because treat it like a puzzle. Treat it like a puzzle. Like, and this may be hard, particularly if this is like a family member that you're like, what are they thinking?
Yeah.
And you can tell yourself they don't have good information or their information sources are biased or what. Fine. They don't think so.
Yeah.
What is of value? What is of value? Because if they are a smart, capable, good person, and let's presume that they are, there is a very good reason why they are thinking or acting the way they are. And if you care enough about the change, about the idea, about whatever it is, then I would suggest that it's worth the work to figure out what that thing is that they care about, so that you can find and start to like spot where the opening is between where you are going, like where you each are to where you both want to go.
Yeah. Tamsen, that's all brilliant. We'll wrap for today and talk about your book, which comes out
October 8th.
October 8th. We will, by the time we release this episode, it will be out. It's available at all major bookstores.
It is.
Online. Very excited for you. I believe this is book number 2.
Book number 2.
Book number 2. You have another book in you after this, and I know you just.
I do, yeah. Well, I also started a doctoral program this summer, so there's also no big deal. Just throw that on.
You're writing a thesis, which is its own version of a book, but
it is. Yes.
So we wanted to give you, Tamsen and I just want to give you a sneak preview of chock full of both concepts, but also practical ways to address change.
Yes.
I know that's important to you as insights without action. Who cares? It's just a fun conversation. That's what I would say. So I want to thank you for coming back on again, and excited to read the book. This is a near and dear to my heart as well. I work with clients on this all the time, and it is not easy. And I want to thank you for putting out your good work in the world. And we will have you back on again 3 more times for the jacket. 3 more times for the jacket.
Excellent.
We won't wait. We won't wait until next time you have a book coming out. We'll have you come on sooner, and we'll continue this conversation, because I know the audience is going to love this, because we all need to address this in some way.
We do. All right.
I want to give everybody a practice in real time here as we wrap up. Relate to the next few people that you immediately think, oh, why are they doing that, or what's wrong with them? Relate to them as smart, capable, and good, and maybe ask them a question or questions about their motivations. And I think you'll learn a lot. I'm taking that for myself from here.
Excellent.
Thank you so much, Tamsen.
I love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So good to see you again.
Good to see you as well. Bye.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Talking to Cool People with Jason Frizzell. If you enjoyed today's episode, please tell your friends. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook and give us a shout out, or take a moment to leave a review on iTunes. If something from today's episode piqued your interest and you'd like to connect, email us at podcast@jasonfrizzell.com. We love hearing from our listeners because you're cool people too.